Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. Hope you're having a fabulous week and that your tank and seahorses and everything else are doing great. I'm rushing around like a crazy person as per usual. Sorry, we're a little bit late. I am sipping on Chardonnay. Let me know in the comment section what you are sipping on. We are actually not on Instagram tonight because when I went to, that's one of the reasons I was a little behind schedule. When I went to load up, for some reason it's doing a security check or something because I haven't been on Instagram much. So if you usually watch on Instagram, hopefully you'll find your way over to YouTube and join us anyways. Okay, so for tonight, it's open chat. Ray and Cheryl both could not be here. They had other engagements. I've got Holly and Vince with me as usual. And then we have a special guest, Mary, who is going to share with us what's going on with her seahorse, and we're going to try to help her. Dan couldn't be here, but he said that anything we couldn't answer on the show, he'd get with me afterwards and we'd get some answers. So, hi, Shyla. Hi to everybody. Happy Wine Wednesday. With that, let's get started. Holly, why don't you set the stage for us where we're going with this to start off?
Okay, so basically, I think about a week ago,
Yep.
Mary, that's
Yeah.
when your girl seahorse came down with tail bubbles,
Yep.
which I've dealt with before, and she put a post on some of the seahorse groups for help, and so some of us stepped forward and gave the standard advice for antibiotics, and also I turned her on to the Allison topical medications, so she's
Gotcha.
using that as well. And she's been sharing pictures and videos with me of how it's going. She's treating with Furan 2 and Sulfaplex.
Nice.
Right now, I think it's been about a week, right, that she's been in the hospital.
9 days.
9 days. She's
Yep.
starting to show some improvement. The red is going away, I noticed.
Good.
Yep.
And so I did tell Mary that the tail bubbles take a long time to heal. Gas bubble disease is very hard
To
to
treat. Well,
it
and
takes a long time. And then we talked about the causes of that too. So yeah, we just she wanted to join us tonight and talk about
share.
that. She saw one of your videos using the Baytril
Mm-hmm.
injection and
Yep.
was curious about that. But we haven't talked about that before, so I really didn't know.
And
You
I
know,
did go back and watch the video, and I'm gonna show you guys. Actually, let me back up. I'm gonna show you guys what she's talking about the video, and I'm gonna back up Holly just a little bit. How come I can't search on here? What in the world? Since when can't you search on my channel? That's not cool. All right. Well, I'll have to go fix that too. Huh. All right. Hang on. Sorry. Let me try to get it up. All right, so the video she's talking about is this. Let me just share that real quick, and then we're going to back up and talk about what it is and all that good stuff. All right, and then we're going to share her videos. But I just wanted people to know what you're talking about. So here we go, and let me try to play this. Okay, let me start it over. We can prevent injuries by making sure there are no sharp, jagged rocks or aptasia within the tank, and we can treat if necessary. If you're able to obtain an exotic vet, you will be able to get better medications like Baytril. Injecting a seahorse with an antibiotic sounds scary, but it's really not. You merely lift the seahorse halfway out of the water, keeping his head underwater at all times, and inject the seahorse with the exact amount of medication required in the situation. It's actually one of the best ways to treat because they're getting the exact amount and they're getting it exactly where they need it. However, okay, so backing up from that, basically I want to make a very big announcement about that video, and I'll put the link to that video if you want to watch the whole thing. But Tom Hornsby in the UK is the one that helped me with that video. Those are his seahorses. And what I probably didn't make clear in the video, like when I watch it, I hear myself say it, but someone new watching it probably would not get it because I lumped a video of treating seahorses with tail injuries and treating seahorses with tail bubbles into one video, which I now see as a mistake. So the Baytril was for an injury. If you watch the video carefully, right, I bet you got that, Mary, after watching it. So that's for like more of a seahorse that has dealt with an injured tail that, or I don't want to go so far as to say, what's the word, Holly, for white tip? It's I can't remember the name of it.
Oh yeah, tail rot.
Tail rot. I wouldn't go so far as to say, tail rot, but anything that looks like tail rot, or if the seahorse tail is injured. In the UK, Tom Hornsby was an excellent breeder who would inject Baytril, and it shows in the video how the seahorses were fixed. I will tell you, I don't think we can even get Baytril in the US. So that's a problem. And if you have an exotic vet, I would tell you to take the advice of the exotic vet, because again, in that video, I should have made clear that that was for tail injury, and that Tom Hornsby had been doing this for a long time, right? So if you go to a vet and they say, no, you're not injecting your seahorse, please listen to the vet. Okay, I've never done it, and I should have made that clear in the video. But back to that. So as far as Baytril, it is a good antibiotic. I don't think most people would be able to get it. So I
I
need to
see
do.
it for cattle and swine when I looked
Okay.
it up, and it's been used for chickens as well. But I think it got banned for
Well,
use in chickens. So I don't, I mean, I had like until Mary brought it up, I had never heard of it. I didn't know about it, and I hadn't seen your video. So then
tisk
I
tisk,
saw
but
it and I saw that, and I'm like, oh, we never talked about that. So I kind of started looking it up.
mm-hmm.
But in relation to seahorses, I didn't find anything more to livestock. So
Sure.
I
And that's
didn't know enough about it.
Well, what I would say is if your seahorse has a tail injury that's not responding to the average over the counter or hobbyist treatments, and you want more information about that, because I need to revamp that video because it's very old and whatever. But if you have an exotic vet, you can absolutely show them that video. And if they need actual documentation from Tom Hornsby or Tom Hornsby's vet, I'm sure that we could still get that sent over if you wanted to try something like that. I'll be completely honest, injecting my seahorse sounds really scary to me. I don't know about you guys, but I can't imagine. I have difficulty doing freshwater dips and doing, pouch evacs. I can't imagine doing an injection. So I just want to put that out there. The video's in my name. I take responsibility for it, but to be clear, it was for injuries, and I wouldn't advise somebody to go out and try that. I did make clear in the video, if you have an exotic vet who will, prescribe this to you for the seahorse, then you're game. And the video does go on to talk more
You
about.
did mention that in the video. You said if you have an
Yeah.
exotic vet and they prescribe this for you, and they would tell you the dose and how to do it and all that. So
Exactly. And you guys just have to remember, with some of those older videos, I still stand by them. They're still correct, but they were made with different people, right? Like I said, those weren't even my seahorses. They were Tom Hornsby's. He's the one that gave me all the information. So I worked with community members to make multiple different videos. And so it wasn't necessarily something I did. So I'm just, full disclosure here. So as far as the Baytril, I think you're smart that you're going a different route, Mary. And then what I wanted to do next is show the videos from Mary, and then we can talk a little bit, maybe get Vincent on what GBD is, the different forms of it, and the average treatment. But let me get the videos that you sent. Let's start with the first one. All right, let me pause it. All right, so this is the first videos from Mary. Here we go. And I want to say, too, before I play it, we love when people come on here, whether you're coming to show your awesome seahorse tank or your seahorse in trouble, because we've all been there. There's absolutely no judgment, and we're here to help. And you sharing, a lot of people don't want to share when there's something wrong. They just want to share their beautiful tanks, and that doesn't really help the community. We need to help each other by sharing when there's something wrong, too. All right, here we go. All right, so Mary, what are we seeing here?
So this is her tail. After only a couple days, I was trying to just show the bubble. I think eventually I got smart and pulled the tail out of the water so you can see it better.
Okay.
All
right,
so
let's
that
go
was
on
the
to
initial.
Okay. All right. Let's see the next one. Oh, am I going the wrong way? I think I'm going the wrong way. All right, here we go. Oh yeah, you can see it better. The bubbles. Yep.
Yep.
And I've actually, and what surprises me is it's a female. This has always happened to me with males. I've had this
Same
happen to
here.
2 different males. I've never had it happen to a female. So that's
Mhm.
interesting. Just goes to show it's not
Can.
just males,
Mhm.
because that's exactly what I remember. And it sucks. I know. And we're just going to keep. So what we're looking at, folks, anybody in the audience, is if you look at the tail, you can see, oh, that's a really good one. You can see there's like little bubbles on them. And the redness, I'm glad you said something about the redness, and we'll talk about that further. But when you hear what I would do in this situation, it's going to be a little bit different from what Holly said. We're both on the same page, but the redness is key to me, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But yeah, poor thing. I mean, she's still swimming well. That's great. Still eating, Mary?
Still eating. Actually improved with her eating. She wouldn't the first
Ooh,
day, first couple
yep.
days.
And that's
So,
a great video. They look like little
Mhm.
pus-filled bubbles. Oh, I hate those
yeah.
things. But
Mhm.
actually, I won't make you wait. No, actually, let me shut up, and Mary, let you finish your sentence. You said eating the first few days and what?
Her appetite's improved,
Okay.
and the length of the affected area seems to have shortened. The redness
Okay.
has lightened up a bit, but now it
Nice.
almost appears that that middle area that it's turning into a sore.
Okay.
It looks like it's opening.
Okay. Was that the last one, or did we have another one? Oh, that's a good picture, though.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
do you,
she
what?
got really good with her pictures, and they're much better resolution. Like back when I was treating thing 2,
Mm-hmm,
the cameras on phones were not as good.
right.
And so yeah, her footage is a lot better than what mine was at the time, I think.
Yep. And what do you have her in, Mary, as you're treating her?
This is a 10-gallon hospital tank. I
Wonderful.
have a hang on the back filter with no media in it, and I've been treating her with Furan 2, which I did a 4-day treatment with 50% water changes. And then after 4 days, it wasn't much improvement. So for the next 4, I did another round of Furan 2 with triple sulfa for another
Mm-hmm.
4 days. Today's day 9. I was talking to Holly because I was yesterday I started doing the topical as well. So I was going to give her a break, but she said keep going, do at least 10 days of the double antibiotics and water changes and the topical twice a day.
Yep. Nope. Nope. I mean, she's giving you great advice. And I just wonder, though, and the reason I'm saying this is I wonder, Holly, did you mention Diamox to her at all?
I did, but her seahorse isn't floating.
Right.
And when I talked to Dan about it, he said don't use the Diamox unless they're floating.
Huh.
Because Diamox is not a treatment, it's not an antibiotic. All it does is stop them from floating. So it's not really, it's kind of like when we take aspirin for a headache, it's not treating the cause of the headache, it just stops the pain.
Right. But it
So I
also
didn't
stops the
see,
bubble. Like, go ahead, Holly. Sorry.
yeah, see, I didn't realize that because I've been told it just stops the floating part. And her
Well,
seahorse isn't floating, so I
mhm.
wouldn't think she'd need it.
I agree with you. And the reason that I'm even bringing this up, let me stop sharing this. The reason that I'm even bringing this up is that I treated, sorry, let me turn my camera back on here. Sorry, guys. But I treated seahorses with this exact tail bubble. And what I did was, high salty, was Furon 2 and Diamox together. That was my treatment. And my seahorse wasn't floating. Now I'm going to have to go back to Dan to find out why he said that. Like, is it bad for their liver or whatever? But in my case, Shyla said it's like a suppressant, if you remember correctly.
Yeah,
Right.
and
In
Cheryl, I
my
think,
case,
told me the same thing. I think a
well,
few people told me that. And so what I did with thing 2, I
mhm.
even started because Dan said you could even use it intermittently.
Right.
So I would use it even longer than the 5 days they recommend, or I wouldn't use it when he wasn't floating.
Hmm.
You can actually stop it and start it again.
With thing 2, though, he had internal GBD,
And
right?
extra. Remember, he started with a tail bubble.
Okay. All right. So
He
real quick,
started with a tail bubble, and then I didn't use Diamox on him at all, other than the days that he got floaty. And when the floating stopped, I stopped the Diamox also.
well, like I said, I used Diamox on my Seahorse that wasn't floating for the tail bubble for the reason that it shrunk the bubble. I can't, I'm not a scientific person, guys. I don't know why it stops him from floating, and I don't know why it shrinks the bubble.
Mhm.
But it was more, I think, like thinking back, I think it was more for me because I wanted to see improvement, right?
Mhm.
You know, because I wanted
Yes.
to, I did. So you're not doing anything wrong, Mary. You're doing the right track. But I would just think, Vincent, please go ahead. Wait, are you muted, honey?
I think you're muted, Vince.
Did it work when you
For
did it,
me?
Kelly? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that all you used?
There's a video somewhere on it. I'd have to
Yeah.
find it. But I did do a video where basically I had him in, it was even smaller than a 10-gallon. And actually, I had 2 of them in there. And I had to do major water changes because it was a 10 or smaller. And yeah, I used the Diamox. I used the Furon 2. I didn't use the Diamox long term. I used the Diamox until the bubbles shrunk. And then I just continued the Furon 2. But mine, as you said, it takes a long time to treat GBD. When it
Yeah.
was just tail bubbles for me, I only had to go through 2 Furon 2 treatments. But I am curious that you said 4 days, Mary, because when I did the treatment, I'm feeling like it was longer than that. It's been a minute though. So is that what the box says to do is 4 days? Okay,
Yep.
then I'm probably just remembering incorrectly. But I do distinctly
And
remember
the
Diamox,
reason I
Furon
said
2.
the 10 days is because remember, we don't want to create antibiotic
Super,
resistant bacteria. So
super
when
bugs.
I started treating my seahorses, I think Sandy was the first one I treated. And it was Cheryl that told me that. She says, when you're using an antibiotic, always go 10 days or more,
Absolutely.
even if
Or
they're completely better.
right,
Don't
at least
just give them the 10 days, each medication 10 days. So if you start the sulfa medication
Keep going.
later, you need to do 10 days of that on top of the 10 days of the Furon 2.
Okay.
But what I'm wondering for you, Kelly, is if you tried the Diamox separately from the antibiotic.
well,
would it have
that's
worked?
actually was someone else speaking? I feel like
Because
I
I've used Diamox without the antibiotic, because what happened with thing 2, remember, there was a point when Dan said he was on the antibiotics too
too
long,
long,
and
right?
to stop the antibiotics, but I could use the Diamox to stop him from floating, to relieve the symptoms
hmm
of
So
floating.
my
But it
answer,
wouldn't help him. It was just to stop the floating.
okay, so there's like 5 things I want to say about everything you just said. So first of all, totally agree with 10 days because you don't want to create super bugs where if you start giving a seahorse a treatment and then you stop or change treatment or whatever, if
Right.
that treatment was starting to work, you just didn't give it enough time and it doesn't actually kill the bacteria or whatever's going on, then that bacteria learns to fight off that drug. So then you have a resistant bacterial problem that you'll never be able to fix. So always go 10 days, agree. And then I would say, I personally would keep treating until the seahorse was better, period. You know, pending if the seahorse stops eating or any other, other symptoms occur or things get worse. But other than that, I would keep treating. However, there's also the caveat that Holly pointed out, too long is too long. You can kill their internal organs with these, just like humans. You can't take antibiotics forever or too much because it'll hurt you. So I would say keep treating until they're better, or if it's getting past, 2-3 weeks, contact us or contact someone and, find out if maybe you should go a different track. Then I mentioned earlier about the redness around the tail bubble. And I think that that's key because when Vincent, you were asking, Holly asked if I used the Diamox and Furon 2 separately. And I actually did to begin with. And Vincent, you asked if one would work with that together or something. So I started off with just Diamox because I finally got my hands on it. That's another prescription drug, guys. But I finally got a vet to give it to me. Or I can't even remember how I got it, but I got it anyways. And I treated the Seahorse with just the Diamox at first because there was no redness around the tail bubbles. They were just tail bubbles. He wasn't floating. He wasn't. So the key is if you don't see the symptoms of a bacterial infection, the secondary problem, and you're just treating the tail bubbles, in my personal experience, it would be just Diamox, okay? Because you're just trying to shrink the bubbles. However, as I started to treat with Diamox, redness started occurring around the tail bubbles, and I realized that the Seahorse had developed a secondary bacterial infection. So then I began treating with the Furon 2. Treated with both, not long term. It was only I swear it was only a week or two. I'll have to look up the video. But anyways, my Seahorses got better. One of them got better for good. One of them I had future problems with. So just goes to show. But in Mary's case, there's already redness. So I think you're taking the right track. I don't think you absolutely need the Diamox. I do think it's just shrinking the bubble. And I would also add, we do need to get into a little bit of discussion about what GBD is for anyone who doesn't know, because the key is there's something wrong in the environment. You know what I'm saying? And that's nothing on you. You just never know. As I said, it's happened to me. It's happened to Holly. It's happened to everybody. But something, and Mary, how many Seahorses were in the tank with her?
I have 6, and I have a 307 canister and a 55 gallon, and then I have a hang on the back in addition to that. What happened to me was I had a temperature spike because we started using our wood stove. And I kept looking in and everybody seemed okay. And then finally one day I looked and I was like, something's on her tail. And that's when I put the picture on the Seahorse group.
Gotcha. So the temperature spiked because of the stove. And then have you been able to get it back down? Or how did that work out?
I have a chiller arriving tomorrow. We've been minusculely like one little brick in the wood stove, just enough so that the room's not freezing.
So now the humans are suffering. Oh, geez.
But I took all the glass off the top of the aquarium to help with the evaporation and stuff. So right now it's like 75 with the wood stove, but tomorrow with the chiller, I have a starfish in there that needs it at 74. I'm probably going to aim for 72, to be honest with you.
Yep. See how he does. And that's key to, when nothing wrong with it, but you have to think, you have to, weigh, okay, I've got this that needs this temp, and you have to, so good job, Mary, and good job getting the chiller, and amazing job making the humans suffer for the Seahorses. I love that. I've been there. Yeah. But it's as simple as that. In her case, she has a one Seahorse female, interestingly, with tail bubbles and a secondary likely bacterial infection. When I had my spike, I had a much worse serious condition where they got a bacterial infection throughout their bodies, not just in a localized area. And I ended up treating with Furon 2 and triple sulfa, and I saved those Seahorses too. So temp spikes, definitely go Furon and triple sulfa, no matter what the symptoms are, I would say. But GBD also can be caused, and GBD is gas bubble disease. There's 3 different types. There's internal, external, and pouch emphysema. External is what we're looking at right now. You see bubbles on the outside of the skin. Internal means they have gas built up inside. The Seahorse swells. I think thing 2 ended up with internal, right?
Yes.
So maybe we can show those pictures in a second. But internal is the hardest to treat. I don't know anybody who has successfully treated for internal gas bubble disease, to be honest with you, because once it's in there, it's not the same as you can't use topical, you can't treat from outside. And then the third type is pouch emphysema. That's the easiest to treat, I would say, but it's the most likely to return. That's when a male Seahorse
for whatever reason. Some people believe it's because they had a miscarriage or problems with a pregnancy, and embryonic tissue got left in the pouch and caused a bacterial infection. Some people believe it's just due to organics in the tank. You know, when they're pouch flushing, they're pulling in too many organics and it causes problems. Some people believe it's an injury in the seahorse's pouch. Who knows? Bottom line is the seahorse ends up with this huge pouch, but he's not pregnant and he floats often. And to treat the pouch emphysema is pretty well. There are many different treatments for all of these things, guys. With the pouch emphysema, you can do just saltwater flushes. You can do flushes of antibiotics. You can do flushes with Diamox. I mean, there's depending on the situation. I just wanted to give an overall example, but we're going to go back to the actual case we're dealing with here. But there's 3 different types. So when somebody says GBD, you got to dive in and find out what they're really talking about. Vincent, you look like you had something to say. No? Oh, okay. And he always mutes himself. Salty said, couldn't you float frozen water bottles to help lower the tank temp for people without a chiller? That's a good idea, but it's a pain in the butt.
It's a pain in the butt, and it doesn't work that well, especially if you have higher temps in the room. It only will lower a few degrees. So if you're talking needing to lower 10, 20 degrees, it's not going to work. Like if you live where it's 100 in the summer.
Right.
Good luck.
I feel so fortunate because I live in a state, Indiana, where the temperature is very drastically changing. But my home, I have central air. I've never needed a chiller or a heater because I just set my house and the tanks, respond. That's why I feel so sorry for someone with a wood burning stove. My gosh, how can you even?
Yeah, if I did that, if I used the HVAC, it would cost me a fortune. We use the wood stove in the winter. And then in the summer, we just deal with it, and the tanks have chillers.
And Ray is apparently with us in spirit because he has said in the comment section, even 74 degrees will work with nutrients are under control. Ray, I know you're watching your game, but we would love your input. Holly wants your input on Sumpson a little bit, but we would love your input on how you would treat tail bubbles because, obviously we've had a little difference of opinion. I agree with Holly's method. But the Diamox, that's interesting. I didn't remember Dan and Cheryl saying not to use it unless they were floating. And I know that I did. So it's curious to me. Vincent, have you ever used any of these? No. Okay.
No, I've actually been, I'm not saying I never had it, but I've been pretty lucky. And especially with the Erectus, I haven't had any issues with it.
Well, now we're going to gang up on you. It's usually Cheryl and Ray who are saying, I never had that problem. And we all got to be like,
no, I'm not going to say, no, I've had it, but it was a long time ago. Right. And back then I wasn't dealing with the treatments. I wouldn't have, it was just different. But I'm constantly changing my water. Yes. Because I think a lot of it's all bacteria, different bacterias in the water.
Sure. You know what I'm wondering?
Yes, please.
I'm sorry.
No,
I supplement for phytoplankton to feed the copepods. Is that bad? Is that what created the bacteria?
No.
No, I don't think phytoplankton would.
Here's how I'm going to answer that for my opinion on this one. If you're like overdosing the tank, because what I think Ray would back me up and the others, what typically causes GBD in seahorses, what caused GBD in my seahorses, my male seahorse that got tail bubbles, was organics in the tank were too high. And that was because I had a malfunctioning skimmer. It wasn't working properly. I wasn't doing my water changes as I should. And we see a tank, and if the glass is clean and there's no algae on the rocks, we're like, I'm winning, right? But you can't see all this little stuff that's unseeable to our eyes. And that's what organics is. We're feeding these seahorses so many times a day. If you miss any food when you clean up, if you're letting things build up, anything like that, the organic, it's just like, I think of it in my
non-scientific mind as like the water gets heavier and there's just more crap in the water and more likelihood to hurt the seahorse, right? And so that's probably not the case. Obviously, it's not the case in Mary's situation. It was just a temperature spike. But Ray said if the phyto isn't used by anything, then it will likely die off and increase DO. So that was kind of what I was getting at. You've got copepods eating the phyto. Maybe just for fun, just to see how it goes, maybe cut back a little bit because you don't want to put too much in because that could add to organics if it's not being eaten. But as long as it's being eaten, it's not. That's anybody else thoughts on that? Because I mean, I've heard people dose phyto to tanks, period, and there's no problem.
Well, I don't do
zooplankton and
seahorse
phyto.
tanks with phyto. I do my reef, but not the seahorse tanks. How big is your tank?
55 gallons, but I have a
55
pair of mandarins, so I have a lot of copepods in there.
So you have
gotta feed the
substrate
mandarins.
too.
Yes, I have live sand, live rock.
Okay.
One piece of live rock. I had bristleworms before, and I yanked everything out, and now I have a new fresh piece of live rock in there.
See, to me, the sand, the substrate, it makes it easier for the organics to build up compared to a bare bottom tank.
Okay.
You know, because when I feed, if they don't eat it all, I'm going to take it out. Well, you can't do that with sand because you really can't see the food that ends up in the sand, and there's no way to siphon it out after every feeding. I mean, so that's going to build up organics in your tank.
True, but let's ask Mary first. How do you feed? What's your feeding method?
I do 1 cube of frozen mysis, or I treat sometimes with the brine with spirulina.
Okay.
And then I wait. I have a cleanup crew in there of Nacerius snails and serret snails and peppermint shrimps, and what do you call them? Sand sifting starfish. And I do like maybe 2 to 3 times a day, 1 cube. Sometimes I'll do like an extra cube if I notice that it's a fine line I've been walking because I don't. Sometimes they look skinny to me, and I'm like, here's another one.
Do you rinse your food?
I love Vincent's question, but I do want to say, if they keep eating it, I don't have a set schedule either. Like I have set times, but if I look and it's all gone, I'll give them more for sure. But go ahead, Vincent.
No, do you rinse your food, the mysis and brine?
No, I just put the cube in the feeder and it drops down.
No, I mean, my opinion is you should rinse it because frozen foods are loaded with phosphates.
Yes.
And rinsing them gets rid of a lot of that stuff that the seahorses aren't going to take in anyway. And that way, whatever you're putting in it, they're eating it. But you don't have all that other stuff floating around in the water.
It's interesting that you mentioned the phosphate, because tonight I literally upped the filter also. I went from a 307 to a 407, still with the hang on the back additionally. And there were these phosphate pads in it, and I'm like, what's this for? But I stuck it in anyways. So
hey, good.
Help.
And I was curious, I think I heard you say you drop the food into a feeder. Is it one of those where it's supposed to melt and then come out the bottom?
Yes.
Okay, I hate those. I'm sorry, but I can't stand those things. Holly, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I mean, that's one reason I feed, I use the feeding stations too, but I remove the chute. And I rinse under just the kitchen sink, cold water. I'll rinse the food in a sieve. And then before I get it into the turkey baster and give it to them, because it doesn't just have the shrimp in there. It's full of crap. It's stuff in there.
Preservatives
I rinse it before I feed it. So I think if you don't rinse the food, that's contributing to high organics. And I also see Ray's comments, and I agree with him in that for your 55 gallon, I think you have a heavy bioload with
Okay.
6 seahorses and other fish and invertebrates. And it just sounds to me like you have a heavy bioload, which is going to create more organics. And plus, I think I mentioned you before also with the canister filters, because they're not really adding any water volume, especially. And it's in my experience, in my personal experience, I used to use canister filters, and it just moving to a sump was a game changer for me. It just gives you more space to work with and treat, your bioload. So it kind of sounds like you have a heavy bioload on the tank.
While I agree, I want to say a heavy bioload can be maintained. It's just more work
Yeah.
on your part.
Yeah.
So if you do the more work, so again, I want to thank Mary for coming. And every single thing every tip we're giving her, we only know because we made the mistakes ourselves. So nobody think that, I mean, Mary, please don't think that we're saying, oh, you did this wrong. Because
No,
we all
I
did
think
it wrong too.
I think 6 and a 55 is very doable myself, as long
Right.
as you maintain your water quality. And I don't know what your water change pattern is, but
I
I
do
would
it
do
every week, every
yeah,
Wednesday. I do 15 to 20 gallons, and then
okay.
I have the additional hang on the back. I also put chlorpera in there.
Clarify. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and that'll help.
Yep. And with the Callirpa, though, just make sure that the one trick with macros, because I'm the macro girl, and I do put them usually in the sumps, but the thing is, with macro, you have to, like people, not you, Mary, I'm saying just anybody watching. When you put macro in, you're hoping that it will take up organics, take up ammonia, take up the food, everything. And it does. But if you don't harvest it, it's still in the tank, right? So just
yeah.
make sure when you do your water changes, just trim it, If you're not using like a scrubber or whatever, just trim it because you're getting some of the crap out by trimming it, and then it grows faster and it just works better. And Ray
You know
did
what?
say, oh, go ahead.
It's not like there's only a few blades of it in the tank. It's not growing very good.
Oh,
In my reef tank, it's really prolific and whatnot, but here it's like a blade here, a blade there.
it
It's
might
not
be your
growing well.
lights. You probably don't have intense lights on the seahorses.
No.
Yeah, so
What's your lighting on the Seahorse tank?
Kind of a dim, not quite just a blue light, but it's a dimmer.
That's
yeah,
why. That's why. Which is
Okay.
fine. It'll still I would definitely not advise you to like up lighting to grow Callirpa. That's
no,
no, don't
Yeah.
do that. You're better off with lower lighting in a Seahorse tank. And if the macro doesn't grow, well, let it slowly grow. Or if it starts looking shabby, pull it. You know what I mean?
Pull it
If
out.
it's not doing its job. Right. But Ray did say he made a great suggestion. If you just like using your feeder with the chute, because like I don't even use feeding dishes. I don't like them, but I have a bare bottom tank. As Vincent was saying, if you have sand, it's harder, but you also have creatures eating it. So that makes a difference too. Like in Vincent and I's tanks, we don't have any of that stuff. So, but if Ray said, if you want to use your chute and feeder, thaw it, rinse it, and then refreeze it, and you can put it in that feeder. The only thing I would say as a caveat to that is do it quickly, because you don't want thawed food sitting out, because that will grow bacteria, right? So don't let it sit there for any amount of time. But if you literally rinse it, throw it in a ice cube tray or a tray or whatever, refreeze it, then you can use it in your chute because it doesn't have all the preservatives. So you could stick with
Okay.
what you're doing and not worry about it. And Ray had a
I
few other
literally just got that. Like
the
today is my
feeder.
first day. I was just putting a cube in and letting it float.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just kind of pick at it and whatever. So trying to keep it contained so I can keep a closer track of how much extra there is. So I can just yank it out. I just got it today.
You know what I do in my 40-gallon all-in-one? Because in my bigger tanks, I had pumps that had feed buttons and all this fancy schmancy equipment. In the 40-gallon all-in-one, I'm dealing with very close to what you're talking about. I've got compartments in the back, I do have a skimmer, which if you can find a hang on the back skimmer or a skimmer that you can add somehow, I would definitely advise that because those help with organics
I have
so
a
much.
skimmer.
Oh, okay, good.
Yep.
So I have a skimmer, I have a UV, I have a sock, I have K1, I have a char chamber, and then that's it. What was my point? Oh, my point was I don't have these fancy pumps that turn off with a click. So what I do is I literally turn the whole tank off, and then I feed, and I rinse my food so the food drops. It doesn't float at the top, it drops, but it all drops into one area. And then I give them 10 minutes to sit and pick it off the bottom or pick it out of the water. And then I use a turkey baster to suck it up. So maybe in your case, I don't know if that's doable. Can you shut off canisters and stuff? I don't even know. Is that possible?
Yeah, just the only thing is I was
Turn it
telling my
all off?
husband I was going to start doing that. He said I can't once we add that chiller because the chiller is
Right.
going to go through the pump
Right.
or the pump to the chillers. However, he's going to connect it tomorrow.
So Holly, how do you keep the tank running when you use your dishes?
No.
Okay.
No, I shut everything off. I did not. There was a time in the display tank when I didn't used to have to turn the pumps off because my feeding station was in a section of the tank where there wasn't any water to blow it away. It would actually stay in the dish in that location. So I left the pump on way back when, but not where they are now. Now I turn off the pumps when I.
But Mary, in your case, the chute and the feeding dish is working, right? It's not going everywhere.
No, it stays right in the little feeding dish. I put it
Well,
right
then
next to my skimmer.
Then I think you should do it just like Ray said. Rinse it, refreeze it. Then you can use what you've got going right now, and you'll be fine. I like
just want
that
to
idea.
answer too. Salty Reef was asking. I do siphon my sand bed. There's a thing that goes on the end of the hose.
Yeah.
It's a wider, and I
do
can
mine.
lift the sand and move it around. And
I do that.
Yep.
Too.
And everybody's just trying to come up with thoughts and comments, to try to figure it out because all we want to do is help each other. But Ray did ask too, how frequently do you clean out the canister filter?
to be honest with you, I thought every 6 months.
Oh,
No.
No.
So that's a
Oh.
big, and it's okay. It's okay. That's why we're fixing things. That's how we're fixing things.
Okay.
With the canister filter, we recommend, go ahead, Vincent. You go ahead.
I mean, I would at least once every 2 weeks, I'd be cleaning it out. Not necessarily every week,
Yep.
but I would be at least every other week cleaning
Okay.
that
Oh my
canister
God.
out and changing the pads and stuff like that.
Well, but I do
thought
have a
the thing
question.
said-
Go ahead, Mary.
I thought it said to only change those big pads like every 6 months so you don't lose your bacteria.
Well, some of the
Let her
pads
finish.
should be
Hang on.
permanent.
Mhm.
Some of the pads should be permanent, and then some of them should be changeable. You
Right,
should
the
have
little pocket ones are
sediment pads.
changeable.
Those are the ones you want to get rid of. The
Right.
stuff, like bio balls or whatever in them.
Mhm.
I don't run canisters. I mean, I'm familiar with them. You would leave that, but you'd want something to pick up the sediment. You don't want that stuff to collect for 6 months
Oh,
and
no.
break down and declare. That's why whenever you do a water change or every other water change, that's a
Yeah.
good time to take that, clean that out, leave your bio balls or
Okay.
whatever you have in there. But any pads that you have to collect the sediment,
Those
that
I
would
change
either rinse them
monthly.
or what? Monthly?
Those are the ones in the pockets I change monthly, but the big long ones on the side, the box said every 6 months with those.
Do
Okay.
you know because you have to remember too that none of us here actually I've used canister filters.
I used to use a canister filter, and yeah, I did mine once a week, and it would be so yucky in there just once a week. But the pads, like there's certain things. There's the biomedia which you do keep, that it just stays in there, kind of like the same with the sump. But like filter floss or pads, the stuff to get the gunk out, I would change once a week in
I was
my.
gonna say most of us here, like the way I use canister filters is they're like a huge butted filter sock, right? I
Mhm.
don't I don't depend on. I've never depended on a canister for biomedia. It's always like a
Mhm.
crap ton of floss just to get the gunk, just to clear the
Mhm.
water. Like if I had a bacterial bloom, I'd throw a bunch of floss in a canister and run it. So I'm curious. Do you know the brand that you have? Because I'd have to look at it to even know what
Fluval.
your
I
Fluval.
was
I do
using
like
a
Fluval.
307 and I just
Okay.
increased to a 407.
So,
And then the pads I change every month.
Okay.
The little ceramic like bio ball type thing, but they're ceramic. Those stay in
Mhm.
there.
yes.
And then the bottom pad underneath that, they said to change every 6 months. And then the
Okay.
big standard, the standing ones every 6 months.
Yeah.
And and this is a great Wine Wednesday for people to see, because before anybody gives any kind of advice, we have to ask a million questions, because
Yeah.
are you relying on the canister filter for biomedia? You said you had one piece of live rock, you
In
had
the
a hang on the
tank,
back, but that's it for biomedia, right?
live sand.
Sand, yes, sand too.
She has sand.
I
Okay.
have live
But
sand.
still, I'm just thinking, her tank does probably rely on the biomedia in the canister. So I would hate to have said, pull it all out and just
Yeah.
stick floss in,
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
need it. So I think you're doing exactly right, Mary. I mean, maybe not every 6 months. And a trick is with the canister, if you have media that you don't want to lose the bacteria, the good bacteria, and then you have the flosses or the pads or whatever, and you want to clean it more often just because they're seahorses, I would suggest every other week, like Vincent said, or maybe even every week. What you can do is, as you're doing the water change, stick the pad that has the bacteria, the good bacteria, in the dirty water as you're cleaning the tank, because that'll
Yep.
keep it preserved. And I mean, as long as it's not too dirty, as long as you're not like getting out muck or whatever. But if it's just a water change, stick that in the water that you're water changing, and then clean the rest of the canister, put it back together, and you haven't lost your bacteria, even though you did it faster than 6 months. Because what I noticed with canisters is the gunk is always below all the media, right? It's
Right.
down at
It's
the
in the
bottom of
very
the
bottom.
canister,
Yeah.
right? That you don't get to. So
I have
So I wanted to
amphipods.
bring up something too about gunk, and I know Vince and Ray were trying to help me with this earlier. So it's kind of along the same subject. I have stuff in my sump that I don't know what it is, and I'm not used to having a sump. I mean, I'm about 5 years in with a sump, but it's full of crap that I don't know what it is, and I don't know if it's it's good, bad, or ugly. So I was
well, do,
trying
do
to
you
figure
clean
that.
this out, Polly?
I pulled some out. I've not in a long time. I remember a few weeks ago I said I cleaned out the grow out tank sump
Yep.
because it had a bunch of crap in it. And I was thinking it was like mysis. I'm like, well, how did it get there? Because it goes through a filter sock. But where it is in the section where I have the biomedia. So I did, because Vince was wanting to see it better. I did share a picture, but I have a bio ball I pulled out. I used a bio ball to scoop some up.
Okay.
And
Well,
I
hey,
don't know if you can see
I
it.
want I want you to actually show us that, but real quick, Mary, you had a question real quick, because I don't want to jump topics too quick.
I buy that Smart Start ocean saltwater bacteria, and every
Okay.
week I add that to the tank when I do my water change. The
Okay.
Smart
And
Start.
Smart Start. I got to look that one up too. I haven't used that one.
It's supposed
Smart
to
Start.
help the tank to cycle faster. It's a good bacteria to add because I lose a lot, and I have amphipods in my canister that help eat some of the sludge.
Gunk. Yep. Yep. I'm gonna have to while we listen to Holly and she explains what she's talking about. I'm gonna research Smart Start, because I'll tell you, I add Dr. Tim's One and Only to my tank probably once a month. Just when there's no real rhyme. Sorry, I keep forgetting my video, guys. There's no real rhyme or reason. It's not like you can see that it's working. I just add it now and then just to boost the good nitrifying bacteria. I do also use probiotics, and there's other Dr. Tim products like that will, reduce organics and etc. We're going to have him on the show soon. But let me research Smart Start while she's talking, and then we'll come back to you, I promise. But go ahead, Holly. Show us what you're talking about.
So I'm wondering if this is a problem for organic. So I don't know if you say, okay, so there's one of my bio balls. Okay, I'm trying to turn it the right way for me to position for the camera. Okay, so in my sump, it's like when you said sludge, that's totally the way this is. It's almost like a muddy, like I can pull it off. It's like a clump. And I've got from
You have cats?
huh?
You have cats?
No, not
No.
now. I used to have dogs and cats.
I've seen that
passed
clumping, and
away
I don't have dogs or cats.
within a year or two. Okay, so that happens in both my sumps. And I hadn't noticed it in the older one because I hadn't really paid attention, honestly. I cleaned it out a couple years back when I changed things over. But after I did the grow out take, I'm all, maybe that's in my regular one too. So I went in there, and it is. And Salty Reef is asking, is that in where the bio balls are? Yes, it is. So in that section of the tank, what I have is I have down in the bottom, there's a collection of sponge filters that I just store in there. And then I have a K1 media reactor, and I have the bio balls are just tossed in there. They're just there because that's what I started with years ago. And so what I'm wondering is, do I need to clean that out? Should I be like rinsing those balls off now and then, vacuuming the stuff out, or like what is it good? Is it bad? It's almost like kind of clumpy mud stuff, I guess.
And to be honest, I think that's why most people got away from bioballs is when you have media that just sits, that's what happens. Think about sand.
Gotcha.
When you have media that just doesn't, like everything that we
So
use
I
now,
can
K1.
maybe like slowly eliminate them, you think, and maybe add more K1 reactors in there?
That's what
You
I would
could
do.
you could do that, or you could take them out and rinse them in salt water, get all that gunk off, and put
That's
them
what I
back in.
did with the grow out
Yeah,
tank.
I
So
mean,
it's
it's.
not hurting anything, you think? It's just crap.
I don't
Well,
think
I
it's
mean, it
hurting
is.
anything if everything's healthy. It's just probably just an accumulation of
Crap.
all kinds of junk crap over the years.
Right.
Gotcha.
It's like you have a sand bed in your sump of bioballs,
Because
right?
underneath, okay, because the bio balls float, right?
Yeah.
But they don't
Okay,
tumble.
so no. So this stuff is in the bottom, laying in the bottom of the sump all by itself. It's laying on the sponge filters because they just sit there. That's just storage for them, right? So they're
Right.
just sitting there. And then it's not all over all the bio balls. It's in here and there, throughout, because they're not tumbling like somebody said. They're just sitting there.
Gina said, put the bioballs in a media bag with large holes. So it'll make it easier when you have to clean them. Gina, how do you clean them? Because I told Mary earlier with her canister filter issue, when you have media that's not tumbling, that's not, that just sits and it collects gunk. The best way to handle it, in my opinion, is when you're doing your water change, stuff that stuff in your water change water so it keeps the bacteria going while
That's
you do the
what
water
I've been
change
doing.
and
And
whatever.
the grow out, when I cleaned it, what I did was I took them out like handfuls at a time. I rinsed them out in the in the used water,
Yep.
and then put them in another bucket of used water to wait until I clean out the whole sump, and then I put them all back in there.
Right. I keep going the wrong way. Sorry. No, yeah. And she just said maybe the next time you do it, stick them all in a big bag with holes, because then you can just rinse
And
them.
I do have those bags, but I'm wondering, like you guys said, that's kind of a pain in the butt if that's going to keep happening. I'm wondering maybe I should switch over to Total K1, because it just sits inside of the bottles going round and round and round.
Right.
So I don't think there's going to be that buildup. Or do you get buildup in a sump anyway, no matter what you like?
You
I've
always
never had one before.
you're
So
always going to get some kind of buildup in the sump. I mean, that
Right.
bottom of the sump is going to collect all kinds of junk. And
Yep.
a lot of people use shop vacs. Every so often, they'll shut everything down and use a vacuum and suck everything out and then clean it. But you're always going to collect stuff. Your K1 is moving.
yeah.
And if this was a wet dry, you probably wouldn't have as much of that thick stuff because it would all be dripping and it have air. But
That's
I
the
mean,
key
you
to
could just
K1
rinse
is
them
the air.
off and put it in, if because your tanks apparently are doing good.
Yeah.
It's just an
They are,
accumulation.
but is that an organics problem though? Is there
Well,
more
I'm sure it
people
is.
organics because
I'm
of that?
sure it is got some kind of organics in it, bacteria. It's
It's if you let it get out of control, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm glad you're asking the questions, Holly. Is definitely, even if you can just shove a vacuum down
Oh,
there
yeah,
and get
clean
that
it out.
detritus up. You want
And-
the detritus out, but every sump collects it. I agree. And
And
I
Mary?
don't clean mine that often. Go ahead, Vincent.
Mary, there's one thing I would recommend, and that's you got to check out the char chamber.
That uses air too.
You have to check out the char chamber.
What is that?
We'd have to get into it, but it's Robert King char chamber.
Robert King makes them.
Yeah, he makes them. I think
So hang on.
Kelly's using them.
I'm
Holly,
gonna,
Yeah, I have
everybody.
it in my away tank. Yeah.
But
What is it?
it's
Go ahead,
it's
Vincent.
just a chamber
Yep.
that has air tube that goes into an air stone, has a
Okay.
foam filter, and then it has what's called aquachar inside of it. And it works. I'm not going to say it works like carbon, but it does at some point. Yeah, in the beginning, it's more of a cleaning your water. But
Yep.
then with the bubbles going through and you're getting oxygen, you're getting bacteria, which gives you more surface area. The aquachar collects. I'm not real great
Okay,
at
let me
explaining it.
let me try to help.
Let her
Is that
explain
like
it.
Marine Pure? I just ordered that.
Marine Pure is good, but the thing with the char chamber is it actually aquachar is very much like Marine Pure, except for it's kind of better because basically the aquachar works in two ways. It works like a carbon and then it works like a biomedia. So it attracts and collects and sucks up anything that charcoal would, that carbon would, but then it's got bacteria inside of it that eats it. So instead of just collecting it and then you throw it out every month, it collects it and it converts it into good stuff, right? So here is, I just wanted to share real quick, guys.
Thank you. I'll get that.
Pictures of when I added and these aren't great pictures, guys, but when I added it to the front of my tank, and look, I got streaks down the tank. Don't pay attention to the tank. But they literally started sleeping on it. They started sleeping on the char chamber. That's the wrong one. That's showing you the algae. All right. So this is when they were first like, what the hell is this? Because I had it in the back and they were trying to figure it out. And they were like, what is this thing? Oh my goodness. And then, we're done with that. But they started sleeping on it. And I'm trying to make videos showing it. But yeah, The aquachar is cool because it works that way. And then the char chamber works because it's literally like a sponge at the bottom. They're in my tanks now, so I can't show you. But a sponge at the bottom, and then it has a chamber that you can see that is packed full of aquachar, and then a top that has holes in it and an air line. So it's pulling through the sponge, the water, filtering it. It goes through the aquachar, which not only pulls stuff out of the water, but then consumes it. And then, air is going out the top. It's air is the key to all these medias for sure.
Is it CHAR chamber?
Yep. Let me put up a link for you.
Can I get it on Amazon?
No.
Nope,
No, you have to get it from Robert. He makes them personally.
Who's Robert?
Robert King.
But
Robert King Clownfish.
Okay, so
breeds
this
clownfish.
I had, I mean, that's my main filtration with my juveniles are char chambers.
Okay.
I mean, that's basically I have a hang-on filter with just for my juveniles, just with the bio wheels.
Yep.
But I have nothing inside. And then I have two char chambers in a 75-gallon tank, a small one and a big one, and a skimmer. But my biological is all coming from the char chambers. And I got, I don't know, at one time I had over 50, 60 seahorses in there.
Which we don't recommend for a newcomer.
No,
Nobody put
but
some on juveniles, little teeny.
But I first started using it in a 40-gallon tank, and I had them all in there, and that tank was packed. And I mean, to me they're worth the money. They're a pretty inexpensive filter, and Robert can explain it a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he designed it, and he's working on a new one now. I think she put a link.
To get a couple more for the grow out tank. I finally got paid for.
I'm sorry, Mary.
Mary,
we have a terrible tendency of talking over each other. You were trying to ask something. Go ahead.
How many for a 55-gallon? Should I get one or two?
You just tell Robert what you have.
Okay.
And he'll get you what you need.
Thank you.
And I mean, he's a real nice guy. Let him know you came from here and that you have seahorses. And that way he knows where, like, because he specializes in clownfish. And
thank you.
Definitely. And I put the links in the description, but I will also send them to you, Mary. But I definitely agree with Vincent. I have a char chamber running in my tank. My only biofiltration, I do have rock that I recycled myself. And then I have the skimmer, the K1, and the char chamber. And Alicia asked, is it better to have a canister filter or to buy a tank that has a built-in filter? What would you guys say to that?
Well, I'm thinking she's talking about AOI.
Like all-in-one.
All-in-one.
Probably.
I would take the all-in-one over a canister filter. That's my opinion.
Well, and it depends on the all-in-one. Because mine, when I say I have an all-in-one, I'm not talking about the little box that has the light on it and has the little teeny chambers in the back. Mine is a 40-gallon.
No bio.
Right. Nobody. And mine has the back chambers where I can put a skimmer, where I can put K1 reactor.
Yeah.
And it's working for me.
That's what I'm talking. That's what my 40-gallon is.
Yeah. And I think we did kind of jump around a bit. And I know I don't think we did we solve the gunk, Holly? Did you get the answers?
I have. Well, I have. Well, because I'm thinking, because I'm seeing that if I keep the bio balls, I mean, I could keep them, and rinse them now and then and do all that. But it's kind of like when I used to have live rock before I switched to, to completely artificial. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So I'm thinking I might want to replace it with K1. And for my 55-gallon tank, my sump, it's 30-gallon, I think. So it probably holds about 15 to 20, because they never hold as much as they say, I've noticed. So it's 15 to 20 gallons in the sump. I've got 1 2-liter bottle full of K1 in there. How many more do you guys think, in your opinion, should I do to replace the bio balls? And I'm thinking I should remove them a little at a time,
Well,
probably.
how many gallons of I mean, yeah, I would be moving a little at a time. And I'd go. You said you have a 2 liter bottle.
I have a 2-liter bottle full of K1 in there with the bio balls. Like they're all in the same chamber, all that
It.
media.
I would just put another 2 liter bottle in there.
Do 2 of them?
Yeah.
I do
How
want to
about for
mention
the
though. Okay.
75 gallon? It's pretty much the same setup. Do you think I should add like 3 in that one?
Okay, so for your answers, I really seriously want to get with Dan because he actually does the math on, okay,
Mhm.
this much K1 equals this much bioball. So I don't want to give you an answer yet. But I would say, in my case, I know that Cheryl runs on strictly K1. I know that others run
Mhm.
strictly on K1. But I will say, in my experience, mine has shut off before. And that doesn't mean it's not working. Like you guys know, my pumps, my
Mhm.
air pumps have stopped working. I've had to wait and order a new one and whatever. And during that time, the K1's just sitting there. It's not tumbling. It's not getting the air.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean it's not working. It's just not
Mhm.
working efficiently. So
Mhm.
I would not have K1 as my only biomedia, in my personal opinion. Vincent,
So
you
maybe
disagree?
leave some
Well,
of
I
them.
was gonna say now when you're
Never
K1,
stopped.
the only thing that moves the water in your K1 is the air,
Air.
right?
Yeah,
Right. And that's the key
on
to
an
it.
air
So
pump.
it's actually not doing anything if water's not moving through
Well, it
because the
still
air's
is.
got to move it,
Well, it's
right?
well, what I meant was when my air pump stopped working and I called Dan and said, "Oh my God." He said, "You're fine for a couple of days. Like basically the bacteria is not going to die off. So
No,
it's
that's not
sitting
going
there
to.
like live rock. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
Or
sitting
my
there like
bio
live rock.
balls, which are
Or your
just
bio balls. Right. So it will collect more detritus when you turn it back on. You got to be careful. I'm just saying yes, this would make your tank easier to maintain. However, you have to know the caveats. You better have a good air pump, is what I'm saying. Because if it stops, it's no longer doing the job you want it to do.
Yeah, I see.
Right?
But I have many air pumps and I check it every time I'm feeding the seahorses.
So you'll be good. You'll
I'd
be
probably
good.
be fine with it.
You're
I
not
just need
lazy
to
like
know,
me.
I just need to know, like I said, how much for.
I will get you that answer by next week for sure. Definitely agree with removing a little at a time. And again, I don't think you have to do it. Your system's working. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just, and that's, I want to make clear to anybody watching, if your system's working for you, stay with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you have some questions about your system and you want to do better, we can help you do better, but you don't have to change everything for it to work. If there's a problem, you want to fix it. You want to set up properly so you don't have problems, but stuff happens, man. Stuff happens,
Mhm.
And I want to get back to Mary before we go, but in the case of a filter or an all-in-one, I would still say if you are capable of putting a sump on your tank for seahorses, I would totally advise it. You can do it with canisters. You can do it with hang on the backs. You can do it with all-in-one. I'm proving you can do it with all-in-one, but it's more work. Okay. If you
Yeah.
want an easier setup, do a sump, and
Yeah.
it adds water volume. You can have a bigger skimmer.
I'll
Go
agree
ahead.
with you, Kelly. I mean, I just remember because when I first started with seahorses, it was many years ago, and I did a canister filter. And popping it open, and then there's water everywhere, and just you have to unbury this stuff because it's all in layers and sections and things, and it's only a couple feet or one foot. It's not that much space to work with, not that much stuff in there. And I mean, I have to admit, because I'd never had sumps before, and it was kind of like it's a plumbing thing to set them up and stuff. It was kind of a scary transition to me because I didn't really have anyone with experience to help me do it. It was all just kind of winging it. I mean, thankfully, my husband's good at figuring stuff out.
Right.
He's in construction and not a plumber, but knows enough about plumbing to where he got the water flowing right and the pumps and stuff. But after I had him set up and start getting used to it, I totally see the advantage of having those, because there's so much space to work with. You can do so much with them, and then it is a lot easier to clean, and everything's right there.
Yep. Well, you hit the nail on the head, Holly, is that it's scary. You know, somebody with a tank
New
that's not drilled
is always scary,
right?
To me.
But a sump, I mean, even just the added water volume is just so helpful to a Seahorse tank. But
And
go ahead.
You can always have a nicer skimmer with a sump.
Yep. Bigger, nicer skimmer.
I have
Absolutely.
huge skimmers in my sump. I have skimmers rated for 240-gallon tanks in a 55 and a 75-gallon tank.
Yep.
But the way I feel about it is also because I'm not experienced enough to be like mistakes
playing with it, right?
Stuff. You know, it's kind of like with the sludge in my sump. I don't know what it is. I have no experience to say this is what it should look like in the sump. So I'm like, what is this? Is it good? Is it bad? What do I do about it?
It's clumpy detritus, dang it. But I would say too that you know, you can I'm so thankful, Mary, that you came tonight and shared what's going on with your Seahorse. And I think that you've gotten a couple of good tips, just like rinsing the food and refreezing it. And you know, making sure that skimmer's cleaned out constantly, and maybe cleaning the canister a little differently. But you only had one Seahorse with a problem. Holly gave you excellent advice on treating that Seahorse. You're already seeing improvement, right? You said the redness has gone away, the bubbles are going down. So we want to definitely invite you back next week to see how things are going, because that's the thing also with Seahorses is, you know, all of a sudden something changes and you got to tweak it, right? Yep. But I think that you'll have less problems with rinsing the food and, you know, just maybe tweaking your water change schedule. But you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I mean, do you have a picture of your Seahorses? Like the ones? Not on you, right? I put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
On my phone, how to get them on there, I don't know.
Right. Well, for next week, maybe send Holly or I a picture of your Seahorses in the display tank, and we definitely want to invite you back to ask more questions, chat with us more, tell your opinions, and, you know, share the update on how the Seahorse is doing, because we want her to get better. We really do.
Thank you. We're adding the chiller tomorrow, and somebody was saying that I don't need to feed the copepods in a Seahorse tank, so I'm not going to do that anymore. They said,
wait, who said that?
Yeah. I think Ray. Was it Ray that said that? I think it's a while back in the comments, but I think he's thinking it's because they feed off of the organic from the mysis, from the Seahorse food.
Okay.
And I'll be honest, I never fed my copepods.
Okay.
Really?
They eat what they find in the tank. They'll eat whatever is in there.
Okay.
And you probably have enough nutrients, I'm guessing, for them to eat is probably what his point was.
Yep.
But I would also add, Mary, that if you're going to stop feeding the copepods, do it slowly. Like whatever you're feeding now, feed a little less tomorrow and a little less the next day. Don't just cut them off, because like even with my peppermint shrimp, you know, if they're used to eating something and it's no longer there, they got to gradually move to something else, you know.
Well,
is
do you
my
have
thought.
some algae in your tank? Like, is there some algae? And see, that's what they eat. So I think that's what they eat, what they find. And if you have, you know, stuff, it's kind of like my crabs. I don't feed the crabs in the tank generally.
Right.
Now and then they come and beg with the Seahorses, and I'll give them a little bit, but most of the time they're finding what they want on their own. Yeah, around.
I've never fed cleanup crew.
Yeah,
but you guys
the same way.
But you have to remember she has mandarins, right? I just want to be careful about what we're saying, because I don't know if Ray caught that she has 2 mandarins in the tank, right? Like,
yeah,
you
but
have
then
to
the
keep
concern
copepods.
is there enough copepods? So
Right,
if
that's
you have enough copepods, they probably have enough food. The copepods probably have enough food. And as
Yep.
long as there's enough copepods in the tank for the mandarins, I don't think you do have to feed them.
Okay.
You
well,
know,
I just want to be careful and give like all the restrictions and here. So I'm just
And
saying,
it would
wait, hang on. If you slowly stop feeding them and then you stop noticing copepods, you can't see them
that's
on the glass
watch
anymore,
the copepod.
then we need to feed them again for sure.
They were getting so expensive that I started my own cultures. I have a room where I'm growing my own brine shrimp, copepods, and amphipods in 3 different cultures.
Oh, and you're going to be ready for seahorse fry. Well, whoa.
Yeah.
She's going to be our next breeder.
Are your mandarins captive bred?
Yes.
Okay, so they're probably eating mices too. They're eating.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they're
They
eating.
do.
So
Yeah,
they're
mine
not.
ate seahorse food too.
Yeah,
Yep.
so they'll be fine.
Okay, I didn't realize that. You're right, Vincent. Good point. Good point. I just always worry about all the critters, right? Like my peppermint shrimps were my babies too. I wanted to
Now
make sure.
go ahead and feed them your pod cultures. Go ahead and give them
Yeah, they
phytoplankton.
need food.
Yeah, keep that, because
Oh
that's
no,
a good
you got
culture to
it.
have. That's a
You
good
got
culture
it.
to have.
Yeah.
You feed the copepods in the culture and
Yeah,
then
not
feed
in the
them.
tank.
That way you don't have to do it in the tank. But I'm about to call back our guest from a few weeks ago that was into the phyto, because I
Dinkins.
swear, yeah, Dinkins, phyto doesn't hurt a tank. I really
No, it don't.
think
It don't.
does.
It really don't hurt a tank. I mean, but I don't do my seahorse tanks because
Yeah.
there's really nothing in there in my seahorse tanks to be fed. And but my reef tank, I do believe phytoplankton is great for a reef tank. And but if you had corals and other stuff in there and pods, a little bit of phyto ain't gonna hurt it. And,
right. And I know
think you do though, Mary. Don't you have some corals and things too?
I have a whole separate reef
Okay.
tank, and that has
Gotcha.
like clowns and mandarins and
well, see now,
coral.
when you get baby fry, you'll be set because you'll have the food down pat. You'll have the food.
Vincent, you're not allowed to say that on
I don't
YouTube.
want
No. But I just think that you're gonna have a lot better luck with the rinsing tips, with the cleaning tips, and now that you got the chiller coming in, I mean, you're doing everything right, Mary, and we're so glad to have you on. And we want updates on the female, and let us know how she's doing. I know we didn't go into depth into GBD, but we have other episodes about that, and Mary already knew what was going on. Holly gave her great advice. But so anyways, anything else, guys? Because I do have to work tomorrow, so I'm trying to call us in short. I love you guys. I love being with you every week, but let me see.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming, Mary.
We want you to come next week too, Mary.
Yeah,
you're invited every
you should
week.
join us every week.
Definitely. And Vincent, I'm going to get that thing you were telling me about.
Oh, look at Robert King. It's in the link. They're nice.
I mean, they're a copy of the link so I don't lose it.
And I would say, I should have said, and I think Melinda said, just private message Robert, because that way you can tell him the specifications of your tank. I'm very impressed with the char chamber. We're not here to sell things, guys, but I definitely agree. It's a great product to have. And
I love mine. The seahorses love it. They like to hang out on it. Like
cool.
You saw mine sleeping on it.
Yeah, they hang on. They hang out. There.
I have pictures of about 20 of them hanging out on one tube with the bubbles.
Yeah. Well, it's still so funny that people still think that seahorses don't like flow. And I know that bubbles aren't really flow, but I mean, they get in it. When I have power heads, they sleep attached so that they can put their heads in the flow. When we have bubbles, they're in the bubbles.
We did miss a question.
Oh, okay. Please.
And it was about vertical height.
Oh, you're right.
Versus horizontal.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Horizontal.
Sorry, Zen Ginger. Hello. Do seahorses really use much of the vertical height of a tank, or are they mostly around the horizontal footprint end to end? Wondering if a taller tank is better, worse, or indifferent. I'll let you guys go. I'm going to go last. Go ahead.
I'll
I
say
like to.
mine, I have, because I have two different tanks, and they're both long and tall. They're your typical rectangle tank. And in one of my tanks, the seahorses use more of the vertical space than they do in the other tank, which is interesting to me. I think length is more important than vertical, as far as what I've noticed, as far as where my seahorses, the way they travel across the tank, they're more back and forth than up and down. But certain individuals will like to go higher up. And I think for their mating dance, I think, depth has some influence on that. Mine are, I think, about 20 inches deep, so not super tall, but they definitely like the length. And some seahorses will be more inclined to hang out higher in the tank, and others like lower. It's kind of a personal preference for them, I think. So I prefer a combination of both. I like my tanks long and not like straight up and down tall, but tall enough that they can go, up and down in the water column.
Vincent?
No, I kind of agree with that. It really depends on the seahorse. I do like tall tanks though, and
Mhm.
at least 21 inches or taller
Mhm.
for a seahorse, and but even 30 inches. But I have long arms, so it doesn't matter. And because to me it's all about viewing. But
Mhm.
they do tend to, if you have rock and stuff, they're gonna hang out in the rock, and they're not gonna be swimming all that much. At least mine
Oh,
don't.
Mhm.
yeah. See, I do think it
They
depends on
go
the
back and
seahorses.
forth.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mary, do you have an opinion? Like, do your seahorses swim more up and down or side to side, or do they have territories? What do you
I
think?
have a triangular tank. It's a corner
Oh,
tank.
okay.
So they scoot across the front in the morning when they're doing their little, reaffirmation dance. And then throughout the evening they're hanging on to the intake filter hose
Mhm.
more so than I bought the fake coral formations for in there. Um, but yeah, they're all over the tank.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my tips. Do not get a tank that you cannot. Vincent mentioned his
Mhm.
arms. Don't get a
Gotta
tank that
reach
you
the bottom.
can't reach the bottom because then you can't clean it. Holly and I are both a or what's it called? A magic
Magic
eraser.
eraser.
Yes, we
Magic
love
eraser.
those things. That's how I get my. If you have a bare bottom, if you have sand, that's a little different, but make sure you can reach it with the vacuum. But if you have a bare bottom, make sure you can reach the bottom without difficulty. I'm not doing ladders. And I would say they used to think seahorses needed the height for the courting dance. I still think they kind of do, but I've had many people say that their seahorses courted and bred successfully in very short tanks. So I would definitely say Holly's right. Um, more important to be wide than it is tall. But if you can give them some height where you can still reach the bottom, do so. And let's see, I do think it's going to mention territories because if you have many seahorses in a bigger tank, in my case at least, I had males that just didn't get along and they had territories, right? And so they had sections of the tank. They'd swim around during the day, but like sleeping, they had their sleeping spots and you didn't mess with their sleeping spots. So it kind of depends on how many seahorses, how big a tank, but I definitely agree with what Holly and Vincent said so far, and Mary. They scoot along and they beg, no matter
Yeah.
where they are.
They like
And
to
I would,
they like a lot of space, period. And they get big. If you're having erectus seahorses, you might get them and they're 4 or 5 maybe 3 to 5 inches. But my grown-up seahorses are about 8
the
inches
size
now.
of your
They
head,
get
no
big.
joke,
Hmm.
Whoa.
no joke. I've got them in my 65 gallon where my biggest male, which got to like 11 or 12 inches, he's
Hmm.
half the size of the tank. It's nuts. I mean,
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
that's
They
crazy.
get
big.
big. That's why I have a 55-gallon. My display tank's 55-gallon. I only have 4 seahorses in there. And if I had more, honestly, it would seem crowded because they're big.
We already know Mary's going to end up with 5 tanks. We already know.
I know.
But
I
I would
technically
also
have 5 if you count the cultures.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And you're doing it right, man. I
Yeah.
can't. That's the one thing I hate about it is the cultures. I want fry back, but I hate the cultures. There's so much work. So bravo to you for doing it ahead of time. And I would say too, Holly, that I think I texted you about this, but I copied when I saw all your Christmas presents for your seahorses. I decided, maybe my seahorses
Oh,
aren't breeding, and
yeah.
maybe they aren't happy because I don't give them new stuff. It's just a basic tank. I just wanted them to breed. So I went out and I got this fake, I'll post pictures, but fake pink coral stuff, and then a big bright yellow, and they were on it, just like the charger. They were like, oh, new stuff. This is so cool.
Yeah.
And they were on it and checking it out and probably looking for food, but hey, whatever. It's really cool to see that.
I think, new. I changed my tank up today. Like, I cleaned the display tank. I do that every Wednesday. And I just kind of rearrange stuff a little bit. I always leave them their favorites.
Yep.
They have their favorites, like you were
Yep.
saying, their territory spots that they like to be. But the other stuff, in between, I kind of change it out now and then, and it just gives them something new to explore and look at. And yeah,
It's excitement for them.
They do seem to appreciate that, I've noticed.
Well, I've witnessed it for myself now, guys. So if your seahorses aren't giving you fry or they seem depressed, give them a new ornament. All right. Did we miss any other questions or anything else we got to discuss? I know the situation with Mary is not ended, but we have invited you back next week. We hope you come back and even just a chit chat. And so, yeah.
Thank you.
I think we did a good Wine Wednesday, you guys. You agree?
Yeah.
Thank you. I learned a lot.
And Vincent, I'll be contacting some Vincent seahorses soon, guys. Can't wait. But I will put Robert King Char Chamber links in the description. And thank you guys, everybody, for coming.
If you have any trouble, let me know and I'll get you hooked up with them.
Vincent's good with Robert King for sure. But thank you, Shyla, Salty, Zen Ginger, everybody for coming. If we missed any questions, we will be back next week. When we do have the guest, I'll make sure to post it ahead of time so you guys know, so you know that it's a guest instead of open chat. But we're here every week for you. With that, I'll say Happy Wine Wednesday. Everybody say cheers.
Cheers.
Come on, Holly.
Cheers.